Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Bava Kamma Daf Yomi. Today's stuff is sponsored by Leslie Nadel in loving memory of her sister Ruth Lewis, Rachel Bat Herschel Halevi Vitova, on her 10th year at site. An Esha Chayil who left us too soon before seeing her children's weddings and meeting her granddaughter. She is missed every day. May her memory be for a blessing. Today's stuff is sponsored by Judy Shapiro in loving memory of her father, Albert Teichmann's 16th year at site. He was a tireless and passionate advocate and volunteer fundraiser for the state of Israel during his 5 decades with the Minneapolis Jewish Federation. We're going to get started now. We have a bit of a complicated, I would say a quite complicated daf. The structure is very easy. We're going to have 3 questions of Rava. Each time we're actually going to bring the first attempt to answer the question is going to be from the exact same Tannaitic source, which you're going to see why they're going to bring it each time, because it's a very unclear source that can be understood in many different ways. So we're going to try to use it to explain it each time. Oh, this is the answer to his question, which basically means there's a machloket about it. Okay. So the debate we're going to see in this Braita is either this or that, and there you have an answer. It's not a great answer, but it's saying the answer to Rabba's question is it's a debate among Tanaim. And then every time they're going to say, oh, that's not what the source says. And each time they're going to conclude that source is actually talking about a different machloket. And then they're going to bring another source each time, or in one case, I think it's, 2 different sources to try to come to an answer to the question. Sometimes we'll succeed, sometimes we won't. So here goes our questions. Our first question we had already yesterday. By Rava, Darsal Kliva Lo Shavar Tov, and Itgagel Makom Acher V'Nishbar Mahu. I'm starting from about 7 lines from the bottom of yesterday's daf. So Rava asked this question. The animal steps on a vessel, and then it doesn't break, but it rolls. So now, when it stops, it smashes there. Now, do we say, look, the animal basically kicked it or, moved it, or dropped it, right? Or actually, in this case, it trampled on it. He trampled on it, caused it to roll. Obviously, that's actually direct damages. Or do we say, no, that's tzrorot? Because in the end, the kli broke by the floor, it's smashing on the floor after it rolled, not from the direct impact of the animal stepping on it. So that would be tzrorot. Now, what's the obvious nafkamina? What's the difference? Chatzi nezek or full damages, right? Full or part. So now the Gemara had the side thing, which is, why don't we learn from Rabba's question? I'm not going to go there because I want to get to our daf. We already saw that yesterday, to which we answer very simply, well, Rabba, it was clear to him, but Rava wasn't clear to him. In other words, Rabba understood it in a particular way, but Rava was saying, I'm not sure if that's the way to understand it, and he actually still questioned it. So now we're going to start from Tashma, 3 lines from the bottom, and for I think the entire of today's daf, I'm going to share the study guide because I think it's very helpful in understanding the structure and following where we are. I found this stuff confusing for me in preparing, so I want to make it as clear as I can. So now we have Tashma. Tashma always means we're going to bring in a source for some purpose. In this case, it's to come to an answer to Rava's question. Hidus eno muad, v'yeshamrim hareze muad. Okay, hidus is hopping. We saw this yesterday. Now, the language here is the language I was mentioning before, is very unclear. If the animal hops, it's not muad. And if it, according to the other opinion, it is muad. Okay, what does this mean? It isn't muad, it is muad. Muad usually means, right, it's usually a code name for half damages, full damages. Expected, not expected. So it's not exactly clear what this language means, though. It could mean all sorts of things. So now the Gemara is going to have a problem, which every time they quote the source, they're going to say the same thing. Hidus sal kadatach. Wait a minute. If the animal hops on something, right, the tarnagol is actually what we're talking about here. Chicken hops on something and breaks it. Okay, well, that's obviously muad. That's kind of a typical thing an animal, a chicken would do. So they say it can't possibly be that it hopped and broke the vessel. So elalav hides vihitis. It must be he hopped and then it flew. Now, once it flies, there's 2 options. Either it flies and damages something, which is what we saw the first time we read this source, which means tzrorot. But we're not looking exactly for tzrorot here. We're looking for something that flew and then fell down and broke somewhere else, right? Where it kind of rolls to somewhere and breaks. So now they're suggesting maybe that's this case, that it kind of flew, right? They hopped, the chicken hopped, the kli flies up or rolls away from the hopping, and now we have this machloket, muad eno muad. So what would muad and eno muad mean? It would mean, right, again, it would mean chatzi nezek nezek shalem. And why would you say either one? Well, you would say either batar tavar mana azlinan, right? That's what we're going to say. This is the root of the machloket. Mar savar batar mikar azlinan. Umar savar batar tavar mana azlinan. The guy who says hareze muad would say he's muad. In other words, this is expected. You hop, it flies, it breaks. That's the animal's responsibility, which means the owner has to pay full damages. That's what it means, muad. The owner is forewarned. This is expected. A no muad means it's not expected, and meaning the animal didn't directly damage it. It rolled or, right, something like that. And we go by when it broke, and it broke by the floor. That's not the responsibility of the owner. Again, maybe you pay half damages, but you wouldn't pay full damages. That's more like tzrorot. So now, and then that would be your answer to Rava's question. You would say, machloket here. You're an Amora, you asked a question. Let's go back to the earlier sources. There's a debate exactly about your issue. To which they say, now part of the problem with all these cases is we're not going to really understand the reality here. Hidus v'tis could be, like we said, it could be it flew, rolled, broke somewhere else. It could be it flew and broke something else, right? And not that the kli broke, but it broke something else, and that would be tzrorot. And that's what we're saying here. In the end, they're going to say, no, that's not the machloket. Lo, bihitis tzrorot. It's where the animal, the bird, the chicken hopped, pebbles went flying, and they broke something. And now, what does it mean, muad eno muad? Well, we already learned yesterday, there's a machloket sumchus in the rabbis about chatzi nezek, I should call it tzrorot, right? Is it chatzi nezek tzrorot, or is it full damages? And that's what we mean here. Okay, so we'll read it right now. But plugta to sumchus v'Rabbanan kamiflage, and the machloket is hidus eno muad means it's a catchphrase for chatzi nezek, or a code word for half damages, which means the rabbis hold, tzrorot, half damages. Hareze muad is sumchus nezek shalem. And basically what it's telling us is if the chicken hops on something, pebbles or something go flying, and they break something else, there's a machloket at the rabbis and sumchus. And then it has nothing to do with our issue, which is if the animal drops something and it rolls and it breaks, well, we don't have an answer to that. So second attempt to get to an answer. Tashma, let's learn from here. We saw this before. The chicken was chewing away at a rope that was attached to a pail, and chewed away at the chevel. The rope tore, the pail fell, and what we assumed was, right, the pail breaks, and what do we have here? Right, right, the rope tore, the dli fell, the pail fell. Mishalmim nezek shalem. Now, what would you say here? Why now? Right now, they're assuming, again, it's all about what's the reality of these cases. They're assuming that what happened here is when they chewed away at the rope and the dli fell and perhaps didn't break right away, but rolled away. And what do you see here? Full damages. Shma mina batar meikara azlinan. What do you see here? You're responsible. Full damages, that would be an answer to this question. Now, instead of the previous, where we'd say the answer is a machloket, we'd have a clear answer. You pay full damages, even though it was a little bit indirect. To which the Gemara wants to reject this on two accounts, okay? The first rejection is, Tirgama achevel, who says you pay full damages for the pail? Maybe the pail is only half damages, but you pay full damages for the rope. He tore the rope. The rope is worth something also. And that was direct, right? And therefore, that would be full damages. The dli, we don't know. So we're going to have two problems with this, okay? In other words, and if you say that, then it doesn't teach us anything about the dli and the rolling and all that. But we're going to have two issues. Number one, hachevel meshunehu. First problem is, if it chews at a rope, it's not something typical that a tarnagol would chew at a rope. Well, as soon as you say that, then this is not, what's tzrorot? Let's just give, this is a very basic thing for today. Tzrorot is a toladav regel. Regel is typical behavior. So it means it's typical behavior for the animal to walk. When the animal walks, it's also typical for pebbles to go flying and the pebbles damage. So it's typical expected damage that happens indirectly. So because it's indirect, it goes to chatzi nezek. But it's not like Karen. Karen is unexpected behavior, right? You don't expect the animal to gore. You don't expect a rooster, a chicken, to eat away at a rope. So therefore, this should be Karen. And then this isn't, right? This is something different. Okay? It's Meshuna. And that's why, and then it would be Chatzi Nezek. So this is Nezek Shalem. It's obviously not the rope, because the rope is, and that's our whole thing was, let's just say it's the rope and not the pail, but the rope would be half damages because no one's expecting you to do something like that. To which the answer, what do you mean? Demaos belisa. Dimaaves belisa. I'm sorry, I just read that wrong. Dimaaves belisha. It's that it was full of dough. It was a rope, right? They're making up things, but that would make this case make sense that it could be the rope, and the rope was full of dough. Okay, from lisha is from kneading the dough. It was when they were kneading the dough, it somehow got, right? You ever knead dough? It gets all over the place. It got on the rope, and then it's actually a typical thing because animals eat whatever they see, right? So the chicken was trying to get to the dough. While it did that, it tore the rope. And then you could say it's the rope. Okay, now, another way to reject this is, okay, well now, another issue with this rejection, but if the idea was you pay full damages for the rope, well, what does it say here? Nifsaka chevel v'nishbar hadli. It says the pail broke. They're obviously talking about the pail. Otherwise, why would they mention that the pail broke? So you can't say that the issue is the rope, in which case we're back to square one, which is we could use this as a proof to show even though the dli broke, you're responsible for full damages, even though it kind of rolled off. To which they say, Ela sumchusina. You could just simply say, in other words, we have to get to how do you get nezek shalem? Now, if it's indirect, right, there's indirect of rolling, and then there's indirect that maybe the dli broke something else, and then it would be tzrorot, and then it's not the rolling, which is what we're looking for. And why would it be full damages if it's tzrorot? Well, they say, ala sumchusi. Remember, sumchus holds tzrorot is full damages. So we could explain this source as a classic case of tzrorot. What happened? The chicken cut the rope. It broke the dli. And then the dli pieces the pail pieces went flying and broke something else. And that's what you're paying full damages for. And why are you paying full damages if it's only tzrorot? Because it's sumchus. This bright holds like sumchus. That says, damar nezek tzrorot nezek shalem shalem. You cannot say this source is sumchus. Why not? Again, this is all an attempt to just say you can't, this doesn't answering our question because this isn't relating to our issue, right? To Rava's question. But if you say sumchus, you didn't read the rest of the Braita. Ema Seifa, what does it say after that? Nitaz mimenu shever. Well, first of all, after it describes tzrorot, not at this stage, and you're going to see even more, it certainly can't be sumchus because it says here, if from the dli, these broken pieces went flying, v'nafala kli acher u'shvara, and falls on a different vessel and breaks it, ala rishon meshalem nezek shalem, ala acharon meshalem chatzi nezek. For the dli, you pay full damages, but for the last one, you pay half damages, meaning the one it broke. Now, isumchus mi lechatzi nezek. I mean, there's another question you could ask, which is obviously the first line wasn't talking about tzrorot if the second line was. And even if you were to say maybe these are two different kinds of tzrorot, but it doesn't matter because it says here on the second one, you're only going to pay half damages, and there is no half damages according to sumchus for tzrorot. So it can't be. Well, the Gemara wants to try to attempt to say it still could be sumchus, in which case we can't use this source to teach what we wanted to teach because it's actually talking about tzrorot and not about rolling, which is something different, right? You understand the difference because in the tzrorot case, it's not the dli we're concerned with, it's the damage that the dli causes. In our case, it's the dli, it's right, the object that rolled and then broke, that's what we're concerned about. Well, this is what you write, Rube Goldberg, where what happened here? The chicken ate the rope. The rope caused the dli to fall, and the falling dli broke, and pieces went flying and broke something else. Now that's already more indirect. That's what we call koch kocho. The dli is actually from the koch of the action that the rooster did, that the chicken did. The chicken tore the rope, which caused the dli to break. But the dli breaking, the pail breaking, and then pieces coming out is already more removed than your classic tzrorot. Right? Our classic tzrorot is the animal is walking on the street, kicks up rocks. Now that was a direct action that caused the rocks to go flying, and then they broke something else. This is the direct action was not the breaking the deli, stepping on it. The action was eating the rope, which then caused that, which then caused that. That's already more removed. Now, maybe you would say that in that case, when it's more indirect, maybe Sumchus would agree it's only half damages. But you can't say that, okay? This was an attempt to try to say, maybe it really is Sumchus, and you can't answer the question from here. But they say no. Elahadabai Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi asked the following question. Rav Ashi actually asked this question. He said, when Sumchus says tzrorot is full damages, does he mean only direct, indirect, right? In other words, only once removed, or even twice removed? And if we had an answer from here, and this was Sumchus, tifshalei delav kekochodami, we would have had an answer to that question. We would have said, oh, it's not, because here he says chatzi nezek. So from the fact that we don't say that this source is Sumchus proves that, in other words, the fact that we don't use this as an answer to Rav Ashi's question proves that it's very unlikely that this is Sumchus, because if this was Sumchus, we would have had an answer to Rav Ashi's question. And the fact that Rav Ashi's question is left as an open-ended question must mean this isn't Sumchus. If it's not Sumchus, then again, we tried to reject using this source to prove that we make the owner responsible, even though the deli kind of rolled and broke after. Well, we don't really know right now. It could be that that really is the source, because you can't say it's talking about the rope and you can't say it's Sumchus. But we're now going to say, so therefore, and there were different ways I could have charted this out. I decided to put this in its own box now, which is as a third attempt. Now we're going to reread this source based on the conclusion of the previous, that this actually could prove our point. Because if it can't be Sumchus, then it must be the rabbis, right? Elalav Rabbanan hi ushma mina batar me'ikar azlinan. So now let's use this as our proof. That's what the conclusion we came to. The two rejections, that this is talking about the rope, this is Sumchus' opinion, we rejected. So it must be the rabbis, which is, again, it's an indirect damage, which we assume right now, and that's going to be the one thing we're going to change in a minute. What happened? The chicken ate away at the rope broke, the deli, the pail that was attached to the rope, fell, but maybe didn't break on impact, but rolled. And what do you see? The owner's responsible for full damages. It must be. We go by the action of the animal, even if it broke kind of a little bit after from, rolling. But Amra Bevi Barabaye, de Ka'azil Mine. No, maybe you didn't understand the case properly. Maybe the case is, and I wrote it in here, that after the rope broke, the chicken kicked the pail until it fell. Okay, maybe he was directly involved with the deli. Okay, even though it didn't say so, it said nifsak hachevel, and then the deli broke, you have to pay full damages. Maybe it was that once he tore the rope, he then kicked the pail until like his foot was still on it until the moment it broke, in which case it wouldn't be at all the case that we were discussing where it rolled and broke after, and then you can't learn anything from here. Now it's a bit far of a stretch to say that, because it should have mentioned it. But the point is, what they're trying to say is, we don't really know the reality of this case. We're not sure. And we're going to do the same thing with the next section. We don't really know exactly how the deli broke. Another way to say is, if you think about it, the way we understood the case to begin with was he chewed away and the deli fell straight on the floor and broke. Not that it rolled and broke somewhere else, right? Somehow we could say it's just much more direct, okay? And then it doesn't teach us anything about a case where the animal steps on something and because it rolls, it breaks, and we're left without an answer. Okay, so that's the first question. We're really left without an answer. The second question, we might come to, there's a possibility we'll get to an answer here. By Rava, second question. Chatzi nezek tzrorot mi gufo mishalem o mi aliya mishalem? Chatzi nezek tzrorot. Now, again, this is a big question. We have this concept of tzrorot, that's half damages. Where else do we see half damages? In shor, tam, shor, muad, right? Karen, which is atypical damages. The first 3 times you do it, we don't assume that the owner is forewarned, and therefore you only pay half damages. And not only do you only pay half damages, but you only pay it migufo. We saw this in the Mishnah a few days ago. You pay from only up to and including the value of your animal, but not beyond that. But if you already are shor muad, then you're going to have to pay full damages and even more than the value of your animal. So now the question becomes, is just like we saw before, there was a machloket by chatzi nezek of shor tam and shor muad. Is it mamon or is it knas? And then we tried to compare to tzrorot, and we said, well, tzrorot for sure is mamon, right? Nobody thinks that it's. And there's this debate, how close is chatzi nezek tzrorot to chatzi nezek of shor tam and shor muad? So just like there it came up, if you say they're both mamon payments, then they're actually both similar. If you say that one is knas and one is mamon, they're different. The nature of them is different, right? Just because something is half damages doesn't mean it's similar to the other half damages, but that's the big question here. So now they're going to say, when you pay half damages for tzrorot, are you paying it migufo, only up to and including the value of your own animal? Or is it even min aliya? Or do you pay half damages, whatever they cost, even above and beyond the value of your animal? So that's Rava's question. So they say, here are the two sides. Migufo mishalem, de lo eshkachan chatzi nezek de mishalem aliya. Well, there is no other half damages that you pay min aliya, because the only other half damages we have is shor tam, and there you pay only migufo, so can't be any different than that chatzi nezek. Or do we say no? There's a big difference between chatzi nezek tzrorot and chatzi nezek keren. What's the difference? Chatzi nezek of a shor tam. Chatzi nezek of a shor tam, the whole issue is it's unexpected behavior. Now, what's the issue with tzrorot? It's indirect, but it is expected. An animal walks, and of course pebbles are going to be kicked up. The fact that the pebbles then broke something else, that's already indirect. That's why you have chatzi nezek. But in the end, it is expected behavior. So therefore, there is no other model of something that's typical behavior where you have it migufo. Therefore, it must be min aliya. So those are the two sides. Okay, logic to each side, right? Do we learn it from the model of chatzi nezek, or do we learn it from the model of this is typical behavior? And any typical behavior, it's going to be min aliya. So again, we're going to bring as our first source the same source. And then I told you for all three questions, this is going to be the source, which is the source they're going to start with. Hidus tashma. Let's learn from here. Hidus eno muad v'yesh omrim harez muad. Now again, since it's very unclear what does muad and eno muad mean, what they're going to say is this. First, they say, again, every time they're going to say this, they're going to explain. Hidus salkadatak. Wait, if it hops, you're not muad. That's typical behavior. Elalav hidus v'hitis. It must be hopped and it went flying, and now this time it went flying and broke something. They're clear it's tzrorot. Last time we thought maybe it wasn't tzrorot. But what's the machloket here? To say muad, eno muad, instead of saying what we thought before, half damages, full damages, Rabbanit Sumchus, v'haka miflage. Manda amar eno muad, kasavar migufo mishalem. Again, another code for saying migufo is to say it's not muad, it's tam. And muad would mean min aliya, because that's the difference between a shor tam and a shor muad. So the one who says eno muad holds migufo. And manda amar muad kasavar me aliya mishalem. So maybe that's why they said this unclear terminology, muad, eno muad, maybe it meant gufo or aliya. Again, gufo would be the tam, eno muad, and aliya would be the muad. So they say no, just like we said before. No, but plukta de sumchus ve'Rabbanan kamiflage. This source has nothing to do with migufo me'aliyah. It's all about how much damage do you pay for tzrorot. It's the classic machloket Rabbanan sumchus. Do you pay full damages or half damages for tzrorot? And therefore, this has nothing to do with migufo me'aliyah, and you can't learn it from here. Next scenario, and this one we're going to actually, again, it was a debate about how to bring this actually, because it's really one source that we're going to go through a lot of back and forth about how to understand the source. In the end, we're going to use it we're going to understand it in three different ways. Okay, we're going to take the second, third, and fourth way to answer Rava's question here is all going to be from the same source about a dog. So hakelev shanatal chalala, he takes a cake that was baking on coals, and attached to the cake were coals. And halach legadish, and he goes into someone else's field. V'achal chalala v'hidliket hagadish. Now, first of all, he took someone else's cake. That's not going to really be so relevant to us. But he eats the harara, he eats the cake, and hidliket hagadish. And while he's doing that, what happens? He's not going to eat the coal. The coal drops and burns someone's stack of wheat. So obviously he ate. That's shame. He ate that. He's going to be liable full damages. But on the field or the pile of wheat that he burned, he's going to have to pay half damages. Now, why half damages? My time alav mishum dahavia lehut tzrorot. Now they're going to assume basically what happened. He ate the harara, with that, without intending really that caused the coal to fall. That caused, that's tzrorot. Some people say these actually, the part that it fell on is really full damages, but then it rolled or kind of, caused a fire to spread in the whole pile. The rest of it is half damages. Anyway, however you look at it, we're now going to say this is tzrorot. And then, now we're trying to look for an answer of gufo me aliya. All this told us was chatzi nezek, which is tzrorot. Okay, we know that. This is the rabbis, obviously. It's not sumchus. But what helps us here is Tane Allah. There's a breita about this breita that says Mishalem v'Tane Allah mishalem chatzi nezek. Okay, there's a breita that said. I'm sorry, I skipped an important word. Mishalem chatzi nezek migufo. It says you pay half damages migufo. So now, as long as you assume this is tzrorot, and that's going to be our back and forth here, is this a din of tzrorot? It really depends on what the reality of the case is and how you view it. If this is tzrorot, then you have your answer, because it's clear that Kamma says it's chatzi nezek migufo. So basically, Kamma is talking about a case of tzrorot, and it's chatzi nezek migufo, and there's your answer. We want to know chatzi nezek tzrorot, is it migufo or min aliya? So as long as you can prove that this case is tzrorot, you're in good shape. You have an answer to the question. To which the Gemara says, wait a minute. Before we even read this inside, I want to explain to you that Rabbi Elazar disagrees with Kamma here. They didn't bring you the whole breita, and they don't even quote it later, but they reference it. And Rabbi Elazar says you pay full damages. Now, since it says nezek, chatzi nezek migufo is the rabbis, and when Rabbi Elazar disagrees, he says, no, you pay full damages, but he doesn't, this is a really key point, he doesn't say min aliya. He just says, I disagree with you about the chetzi part. I think you pay full damages. We assume that Rabbi Elazar says you pay full damages migufo also, meaning no more than the value of your animal. This is going to be a key point, because if you want to say that this is a law of tzrorot and you pay half damages migufo, v'tizbara, you really think that that's what's going on here? And then you have your answer. L'Rabbi Elazar nezek shalem migufe mi eshkechan. If Rabbi Elazar is assuming right now, according to what we said, Rabbi Elazar will hold like sumchus, right? If he holds like sumchus, then he's going to say it's full damages. But if tzrorot is viewed as full damages, why on earth would it be migufo? Just like shor muad, right? Anytime you pay full damages, it's min aliya. It's never migufo. So we have to figure out why on earth Rabbi Elazar would say it's full damages, but migufo. Doesn't really make sense. And this is what's going to be complicated and a little bit hard to follow, because they're going to come up with all sorts of theories here that like bring in all different opinions. So now they say, Ella, kigon, it must be deshane beha begachelet. Okay, so Rashi says, what's the case of shane begachelet? Shane means he did it with a shinoi. Now, as soon as you say he did it with a shinoi, meaning it was atypical. For the animal to eat and the thing to fall, that's very typical. It's just like the animal walking and tzrorot go flying, the animal eating the cake and the coal falls, that's typical. But if you can say it was atypical behavior, so Rashi gives an example. Let's say he put it in his mouth and then put it down on the gadish directly, okay? And then that might be the case where not tzrorot, he put it down on the ground. Now, what's the issue with that? That's very atypical behavior. Why would an animal do that? So it's not to be expected. And therefore, you would have to say, now, then it's, what is it? It's shor, it's Karen. If it's Karen, it's half damages. But Rabbi Elazar says it's full damages migufo. So we have to explain this. Why would he say that? Well, we already learned. Now, remember, where's this gadish? It's in someone's private property. You remember the machlok of Rabbi Tarfon and the rabbis about Karen in the Reshut Anizak. If some shor goes in from, let's say, Ruth's shor, goes into Naomi's field and does Karen damages, according to Rabbi Tarfon, she's actually, even though she's not a shor muad, Ruth's ox has never done anything bad before, atypical, but because she comes into Naomi's field, she's liable full damages. So now we're going to explain Rabbi Elazar, who says nezek shalem migufo. First, we're going to deal with the nezek shalem, then we'll get to the migufo. Rabbi Elazar savar la ki Rabbi Tarfon ta'amar meshuna keren b'chatzer anizak nezek shalem mishalem. Right, even atypical damages, if it's in the chatzer anizak, you're going to have to pay full damages. And they say, wait a minute, the lohi, 1 second, that can't work because My time a mukmalaka Rabbi Tarfon mishum nezek shalem. Rabbi Elazar savar kesumchus da'amal tzrorot nezek shalem shalem. So now we're going to say the following. No, it can't be that. Why? Because it's nezek shalem. Okay, 1 second. Let's stop for a minute. According to this, okay, let's just explain. Actually, we didn't really explain the gufo yet. But what they basically want to say, sorry, at this stage, I should have stopped here. We basically are rejecting saying that it's chatzi nezek tzrorot and therefore it's megufo, and that gives us an answer because this isn't tzrorot at all. It's Karen, okay? Kamma says it holds like the rabbis. This is atypical behavior and you pay half damages megufo. And Rabbi Elazar says it's like Rabbi Tarfon, you pay full damages and it's megufo. They didn't really explain yet megufo, but because it's Karen and it's short time, you would say, and then you would say the following. The Rabbi Tarfon's approach is, even though he disagrees and thinks the Karen in the Ruth's ox in the domain of Naomi does atypical damages, let's say gores her ox, right, would be the other typical case. In this case, it's putting down this karara and making a fire, but it's atypical. But since it is still Karen and it was a short time, you're going to pay me gufo, okay? And that's how we get to it. But now, and therefore this has nothing to do with it. But now they're going to say the following. Wait a minute, the lohi. No, let's suggest something else. And let's use this again. And that's why I put in its, even though it's kind of the continuation, I put it in its own box because it's another attempt to try to get to an answer. My time a mukmalaki Rabbi Tarfon, mishum nezek shalem. Right? The whole reason you were motivated to say this was Rabbi Tarfon and it was Karen is because Rabbi Elazar says nezek shalem, and nezek shalem is usually, right, that's the way to get, it's an explanation. But you could say something else and keep it as tzrorot, okay? In other words, what happened here? We started with just Kamma and we said, oh, chatzi nezek, it's tzrorot. They said, but wait, Rabbi Elazar says full damages can't be tzrorot. It must be Karen, right? And the whole machloket is Rabbi Tarfon the rabbi. And the Gemara says, what do you mean? You could just say that Rabbi Elazar savar kesumchus, that it's tzrorot, right? In other words, tzrorot, we have Kamma, and then it's very simple, right? Let's see. Look at the chart on the second part of the study guide, the second side. The first chart within the chart, Kamma holds chatzi nezek migufo is like the rabbis. Rabbi Elazar says nezek shalem migufo is like sumchus. Now, the issue you have to explain here, though, sumchus holds nezek shalem. How do we get to migufo? If you said it's all from the world of Karen, you could see that maybe Rabbi Tarfon holds Karen payment for a short time, even though it's a Rishon and Isaac, we're going to make you full damages. It's still only migufo because you're only a short time. But once you go into tzrorot and you go with sumchus, what logic would you have for saying migufo? Tzrorot is full damages according to sumchus. You should be mishalem min aliya. So they say the following: Rabbi Elazar savar kesumchus tamar tzrorot nezek shalem mishalem. This savar like Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're adding. This is why it's complicated. We're adding another opinion that we didn't know about before, who says the following: Tamar tzad tamut bimkoma omed. This is a bit of a weird thing. What Rabbi Yehuda says is, and this is in the world of Karen, but basically they're going to apply the same logic to tzrorot. So how does it work? If an animal gores another ox, right? An ox gores an ox. Ruth's animal gores Naomi's ox and causes damage. So we have what's called short time and shor muad, right? The first 3 times she's going to do it, she's called a short time. After that, she's going to be a shor muad, Ruth's ox, and Ruth is going to have to pay full damages. But we normally say full damages are min aliya, and short time is mina migufo. But what Rabbi Yehuda said is when Ruth's ox does it the 4th time and is liable full damages, well, we're actually, those full damages are split 50-50. Really, Ruth's ox already is liable for half damages the first few times, which means that when she's now liable full damages, it's actually viewed as tam plus another half, okay? So the 4th time, okay, we'll see the debate exactly which time, but let's just go with the opinion that it's the 4th time. There's short time, she pays half of it migufo, and the other half can be mina aliya, the extra half that now she has to pay when she's a muad. So likewise, we could say the same thing with tzrorot, okay? That's what means tzad tamut and komal medet. And when ki katane migufo at tzad tamut. Sumchus says half, full damages, not like the rabbis who say half for tzrorot. Well, we're now going to say that sumchus is, again, it's a little bit of a weird theory. Sumchus's full damages are actually made up of the half of the rabbis, which is migufo, and the other half is mina aliya. And when Rabbi Elazar said, I disagree with you about the chatzi nezek versus full damages, but he doesn't disagree about the migufo, and therefore we assume Rabbi Elazar agrees migufo. He's talking about the first half is migufo, okay? And that's then, and what we're basically saying is we'll apply the same logic of this distinction of Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to shor, tam, shor, muad, and keren. We're going to apply it to tzrorot as well. Okay, that's why it's a little bit complicated here. So, and then again, this is the debate. Chatzi, and then according to this, they all agree that the first half part of damages of tzrorot are migufo, whether you're Rabbi Elazar who holds like sumchus and it's full damages, but the first half is migufo, and then you have your answer. Chatzi nezek tzrorot is migufo. But Rav Sama Braid, Amarle Rav Sama Braid, Rav Ashi, the Ravini says, no, I disagree with you. Imor deshamal ele Rabbi Yehuda betam v'naseh muad, but b'muad b'tchilato mishamal, moving out on the bed. He says, wait a minute. This split that Rabbi Yehuda has between saying once it becomes a muad, it still has the tam part to it. That's when it started with a tam, meaning it wasn't warned from the beginning because it was atypical behavior. But in typical behavior, there's no such thing as saying, oh, you still have the tam part, the migufo part. It's half plus half. No, Sumchus thinks that since it's typical for the animal to walk and it could, scatter rocks around and the rocks could damage, that's full damages. Muad mitzchilato. He's forewarned from the beginning. Full damages, min aliya. Where are you adding in here this thing about it's got the migufo half to it? There's no such thing. So they reject this reading. But now they say, okay, fourth attempt, okay, it's the third reading of this Kelev story, this dog case. Ki ka'amar Rabbi Elazar nezek shalem ki gon di'iyad. Maybe the machloket is this. Maybe Rabbi Elazar and the rabbis are disagreeing about something else. When they say there's nezek shalem, and now we're going to see later that this is all according to Sumchus, really, that mar savar yesh ha'ada'a litzrorot, mar savar ein ha'ada'a litzrorot. Again, we're combining shor tam and shor muad with this chatzi nezek tzrorot. Maybe there's something about being forewarned and not being forewarned. Maybe there's a difference. When the rabbis say chatzi nezek, it's because they hold there's no such thing as muad for tzrorot. And Rabbi Elazar, when he says nezek shalem migufo, he says you pay full damages because this, when do you pay full damages? When it was a shor muad, when it did tzrorot 3 times already, then you're going to pay full damages. And then it's going to be migufo because, again, how are you going to say migufo? Because if it's shor tam shor muad, was it expected to do tzrorot or not expected to do tzrorot? Well, then already you can say, like Rabbi Yehuda, that there's the tzad tamuchebo. Half of it is migufo, and that's what he's referring to when he says migufo. He's talking about the half, that's the shor tam element. Okay? Because in the beginning, right, when it does it the first and the second and the third time, and you only pay half damages, it's going to be like a shor tam. Again, it's not a shor tam because a shor tam is keren. This is different. But there's a question, is there hada'ah for tzrorot or not? So now the Gemara says, no, you can't possibly say that that's the debate between them. Is there such a concept of muad and tam for tzrorot damages or not? Why? Well, Elaha Debai Rava. Remember I told you there's 3 questions of Rava we're going to deal with today? That we're in the second one. The third question Rava is going to ask, and the reason why they get to it is because it's coming up right now, then they're going to go in depth about this. Well, Rava asked, Yesh ha'adah litzrorot or ein ha'adah litzrorot? Rava asked the question, is there such a concept of shor tam and shor muad? Well, ila Rabbanan, and he didn't answer the question. Now, if this machloket between Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Elazar is there hada'ah, is there not hada'ah, then ila Rabbanan in hada'ah litzrorot, ila Rabbi Elazar yesh hada'ah litzrorot. Rava would have answered simply again. Rava's an Amora, and these guys are Tanaim. So, if really the machloket Tanaim was, is there hada'ah litzrorot or not, then Rava, when he asked the question, or first of all, he wouldn't ask the question at all, because it would be obvious. According to Rabbi Elazar, there is a concept of muad by tzrorot, and according to the Tanna Kamma, there isn't a concept of ha'adah litzrorot, right? Shor muad. So the fact that Rava didn't answer that, or even ask the question in the first place, would seem to be clear that that's not the machloket between Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Elazar, which would then say this is not the machloket. And again, I just want to be clear. If this is the machloket, then again, the issue is tzrorot, it's not keren. And the question is, why do you pay half damages or full damages? Because do we view, is there a concept of shor muad? It would be the 4th time he did it. And would there be, is it considered muad, that now you would have to pay nezek shalem if it's the fourth time the animal kicked tzrorot. Notice what they both hold. Migufo. That would teach you the answer to his question. It would be migufo. The payment for tzrorot is migufo, right? For only up to the value of the animal, not more than that. So then you would have your answer. So, but you can't because Rava asked this question and it wasn't answered, so it doesn't make any sense. But now they say, no, Rava could answer. Amar l'cha Rava. When I asked my question, that was aliya de Rabbanan, de pligele de sumchus. I was talking about Tana Kamma, who holds there's chatzi nezek tzrorot. And in chatzi, if you hold like the rabbis, chatzi nezek tzrorot, there's no question. It's not clear. That's not what Tana Kamma and Rabbi Elazar were discussing. When they had this machloket, chatzi nezek or nezek shalem, their machloket was within sumchus. Okay, so aval hacha, this machloket that we talked about, chatzi nezek migufo or nezek shalem migufo, bein l'Rabbanan, bein l'Rabbi Elazar, kis sumchus sfira lehu, de'amar tzrorot nezek shalem mishalem. Okay, we're going to basically say that the machloket between them, they both are arguing within sumchus. And Rava's question about ha'adah was within Tana Kamma. That was left with the question. But within sumchus, that there's a machloket. Is there ha'adah or not? Again, when sumchus says full damages, is it time number 1, 2, and 3, or is it only time number 4 that you pay full damages for tzrorot? And that is the machloket between Tana Kamma and Rabbi Elazar. Okay, then, so then the amar tzrorot nezek shalem mishalem. Now, what's the problem? How could Tana Kamma say chatzi nezek migufo if he's holding like Rabbi Elazar? That makes no sense. I'm sorry, if he's holding like sumchus. Sumchus says it's nezek shalem. So we have to explain that. Umay amar rabbanan chatzi nezek deshane velo yayin. Now remember, we're talking about this dog. It's not just any case. We're talking about this dog that took the charara. Now again, what did we say? It's a shinoi. Okay? Maybe normally Sumchus would say that you would pay nezek shalem. But in this case, it's a shinoi, which means it's Karen, right? And then velo yaid, and he wasn't muad, ubeplukti de Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanan kamiflagei. Okay, and then the machloket is that becomes it's Karen b'chatzer hanizak. And then, okay, so now they say, and then we're going to have this machloket, right? Again, Rabbi Tarfon's going to say nezek shalem because it's in someone's field, and Tana Kamma is going to say, right? So Rava could say, one second, right? So basically, the rabbis are going to say it's only chatzi nezek because they're going to say this isn't. This is like Rabbi Tarfon. They don't agree with Rabbi Tarfon. And it would be chatzi nezek still because, again, it's a bit of shinoi because, again, we're going to assume the animal put the coal down directly. Again, we're having debates about what exactly the reality of the case is. That's part of the problem. It's not just what opinion we hold by, but what actually happened. To which the Gemara says, so then that would explain, then you could still say that this is the machlokah between them. So now they say, no. Migufa imor deshamalei Rabbi Tarfon nezek shalem migufo mishamalei. Wait, you want to say that the nezek shalem migufo that Rabbi Elazar said is because he holds like Rabbi Tarfon? How could you say that? If you pay nezek shalem because it's a shor muad, you'd be paying min aliya. That's the whole thing about a shor muad, right? There's no such thing. Migufo mishamalei. Who said that there is migufo for nezek shalem? To which they say no. In mehecha ma'itela mikeren mirishut harabim. Now we're going to have a whole thing about Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon, again, this is all within a discussion. Can we use this or not as our source? And they basically say that this opinion of Rabbi Tarfon of Keren B'Reshut HaRabim, Keren B'Reshut HaNizak. Again, what do we have? Rabbi Tarfon distinguishes between if an ox gores, Ruth's ox gores Naomi's ox on the street, she's going to have to pay, right? That's half damages because it's unexpected. But if she goes into Naomi's field, the ox, and if the ox goes into Naomi's field and gores Naomi's ox in Naomi's field, then Ruth is going to have to pay full damages. Now, we're now going to say, we want to try to say this whole thing is nezek shalem migufo. Why would nezek shalem migufo be when Ruth has to pay in Naomi's field for her shor, her ox going into Naomi's field would have to pay migufo? Well, that's because of, and I'm not going to get into it now because of time, but there's a Mishnah further on that explains Rabbi Tarfon's logic. Rabbi Tarfon gives a logical argument, and it's all learned out from Keren and Reshut HaRabim. Okay? And again, I'm not going to go into it now, but because it's all learned out from there, they're going to say Mehecha Maiteli, where does he learn it from? From Karen Rishut Rabim. And there's a concept of Dayo Lavo Min Adin Liyot Kanidon. It's a Kal V'chomer from Karen and Rishut Rabim. Now, Karen and Rishut Rabim, everyone agrees, half damages migufo, because that's short time. So therefore, when Rabbi Tarfon is going to come to this logical conclusion that from there you can learn that the shor is obligated in the full damages in the domain of the damaged person, if Ruth's ox goes into Naomi's field, it can't be any more strict than the original law was learned from. And since Karen and the Rishut Rabim is learned from is migufo, also this is going to be, yes, Rabbi Tarfon says nezek shalem, but it's only migufo. So then they say, wait a minute, but he doesn't have this concept of you can only learn from a kal v'chomer things that are like it, and you can't learn more chamor, like make it more strict. So they say, no, that's not true, because ki late lehu dayo hecha de mafrech kal v'chomer. No. When he doesn't have dayo, that's when you can knock out the kal v'chomer. In this case, they didn't knock out the kal v'chomer. The kal v'chomer stood, in which case you could say dayo, in which case, again, you could say that this nezek migufo is, this whole thing of nezek shalem migufo has to do with Rabbi Tarfon, and it's not going to necessarily answer our question. Okay? Or it could still be, though, now there's in the end, we have two different possibilities of this Kelev story. It could be that it's tzrorot, right? And it's the tzad tamut shebo, and that everyone really agrees it's nezek shalem migufo. Or it could be that it's this machloket, is there ha'ada'ah l'tzrorot, or is there not ha'ada'ah l'tzrorot? But all agree again, the chatzi nezek itself would be migufo. And then you could potentially come to an answer that it is migufo. So here, there's possible answers. Now we have this last question, gufo, by Rava. Yesh ha'ada'ah l'tzrorot, or ein ha'ada'ah l'tzrorot? So now we go back to that question. Is there shor muad, or is there not shor muad by tzrorot? Now here are the two sides. L'keren midamin anle, is it like Karen? And if it's like Karen, chatzi nezek, tzrorot, chatzi nezek, Karen, let's equate them. Well, then we'd say there's tam and there's muad. O dilma toladat de regel. Or do we say no? It's a toladav regel. And regel, there is no distinction tam and muad. So therefore, right, which way does it go? Tashma, again, we're going to bring the source. Hidu seino muad, v'yesh omrim harez and muad. Again, hidu sakadat, how could it be hopping? Ela hidus v'itis, it must be hidus v'itis, which is tzrorot. My lav kigon de avitzlata zimna. Wouldn't it be then, he did it 3 times, and then this machloket is eino muad, which means there is no ha'ada'ah, meaning it's still chatzi nezek. And hareze muad, no. Once tzrorot happens 3 times, you become a shor muad and you have full damages. And that would be the way to explain this wording, eino muad, hareze muad. Ubahaka miflage, mar savar yesh ha'ada'ah, mar savar ein ha'ada'ah. And that's where it splits up. To which they say, lo, you don't have to say that. You could say, just like we've been saying all along, bichad is in, it's talking about the first time. And what's the eino muad? Muad, right? Full damages, half damages, and it's the classic machloket sumchus. The rabbis, do you pay half damages or full damages for tzrorot? And has nothing to do with do you become, even according to the rabbis who say half damages, you become a shor muad after 3 times, and maybe you would pay full damages. We don't know. Second source, and we'll finish with this one. Behemashi tila glalim lisa, pretty unpleasant situation. An animal does his thing inside a dough and obviously destroys the dough. Rav Yehuda omer mishalem nezek shalem. Rabbi Elazar omer chatzi nezek. So again, right, we have a split here, half damages, full damages. And why is it tzrorot? Because the animal did its thing, and then the glalim, what came out of the animal, then destroyed the dough. So my lav kigon de avitzlata zidna. Now they're suggesting maybe it had happened 3 times already. And bahaka miflage. Why would they're trying to think? Why would someone say it's nezek shalem? Well, you would say it's nezek shalem because it happened 3 times already. Mar savar yesh ha'ada'ah, and mar savar ein ha'ada'ah. It's still tzrorot. It could be tzrorot 10 times. It doesn't make a difference. To which they say lo bechad zimnu beplugtu to sumchus for Rabbanan kamiflage. No, you could say it's 1 time and it's sumchus and the rabbis is right again. It's whether tzrorot is full damages or tzrorot is half damages, and that's their machloket. You have to remember, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar are Amoraim. So now they have 2 questions on this. Number 1, hamashunahu, but this is very atypical. An animal doesn't generally decide to do its thing right in the middle of a dough, which would mean it's keren, which would mean it's not tzrorot, right? Which they say, didachik le alma. No. It's a case where the animal was in a spot where there was nowhere else to go. It's kind of stuck in a corner, and all there was a dough there, and therefore it was typical behavior. Velema, second problem. If really the machloka between these 2 amoraim are like sumchus or the rabbis, then they should have just simply said, why bring this case of glalim? Just say, Lema Rav Yehuda halacha kesumchus, v'lema Rabbi Elazar halacha kerabanan. Why didn't they just say, I paskin like sumchus, I paskin like the rabbis, which makes it much less likely that that's their machloket. To which they answer, no, glalim itzrichale. No, they wanted to actually teach you this case. Why? You might have thought that salkadat hachamino u'ilu batar gufei griran ki gufei dame kamashmalan. They wanted you to know this was tzrorot, and then okay, I hold like sumchus and I hold like the rabbis in tzrorot. But they wanted you to understand. Don't think because this came from within the animal that maybe it's considered direct damages. No, this is indirect damages. But again, this has absolutely nothing to do with hada'ah or ein hada'ah. So we're left so far without a question. We have one more source that we're going to bring to try to determine, is this hada'ah, or is there, can we come to an answer? Is there such a thing as shor muad by tzrorot the same way there is with Karen? So again, the concept is a little bit complicated, but what we did basically was have 3 questions of Rava. Each time we brought sources. Again, each time it was the same first source, and then we brought other sources after to try to see, could we understand what he actually says about this? These 3 questions. What is there a machloket about it? Is there a clear answer about it? And sometimes we kind of got to an answer. Oftentimes we rejected the possible answers that were given. With that, we will finish for today. Wishing everybody a good day.